Uncle Skunk was not known as Uncle Skunk. He was known as Albert Prey, which was his good name. There were three Prey boys, and they had an old mother who lived in West Topston. And he had a brother named Bill, and Snooky Height was the big fat guy who was related to the people who ran the store in West Topston. And they were all riding around together one evening and had a few, to say the least, when as they were driving, they saw a skunk walking down the gutter, beside the road, walking alongside the road.
Right.
And so there was a discussion about, we heard, if you snap a skunk's feet all off of the ground, he cannot piss. Which is true, I understand.
Yeah.
I've always known that too. So they decided to put it to the test. And they drove alongside of the skunk, and Uncle Albert, being the longest of limb, reached down, and the skunk's tail, of course, is arched up as skunk's tails are. And he snapped him by the tail, but the skunk caught one of his front feet on a bush, apparently, because he apparently had the ability to discharge. And he discharged right up Uncle Albert's armpit and into the car and all of that stuff. So that adventure ended badly, but hell, the night was still young, so they decided to go to the dance. Right there next to the store in West Topston, at the dance store. Well, the long shot of it was, when somebody, I didn't personally come along, but somebody has told me about it, personally came along, all of the dance attendees and the entire orchestra was out on the porch waiting for the cops, and the only people inside the building was Uncle Skunk and Bill and Snooky Height. And Uncle Skunk was Uncle Skunk from that day on.
How did you ever get involved with OXA in the first place? How did that happen? Way, way back.
Way back, I promised my friend Parablodgett that I would help him get his wilderness camp started. So I left the job here where I was the 4-H agent here in this county for 10 years. And then
that's when you came up to Camp Flying Cloud that I was a counselor at or directing. What year was that? 65?
I don't remember Camp Flying Cloud.
You and Putt came up
to visit, to look,
because
check out
you wanted
the camp.
to see a wilderness camp.
I see. I vaguely remember that. But anyway, I went to work. I started that camp, and I installed a wilderness program and got people from over here, but it was only Camp Challenge, but it was only supposed to be to get it started. And after a couple of years, Putter, who wanted to run it himself, was selling his cows and going to become a full-time camp manager. At first, he still ran the dairy farm till we got the camp going. So then I said, well, I really need something else to do. So I'd heard of the anti-poverty program, and this job came up. I don't know where I heard about it, but I went to Island Pond to interview with 2 or 3 other people. I had short hair, and I still had a lot of some traces of the military left in me. I've been running a camp and bossing kids around. I don't know why they decided that I was the candidate they wanted, and I didn't really know much about it, but they offered me the job, and I took it. And then I went to the University of Missouri for a 6-week course about the anti-poverty program. And Jesus, I bought into it. I mean, I learned all about it, and I realized what I'd been hired for. And I became enthralled with the anti-poverty movement, and I really subscribed to it. I wanted so. When I was hired for a job I knew practically nothing about, and didn't have any idea what I was getting into. But that University of Missouri, I don't remember who ran that course. It was a 6 weeks course, and I learned a lot about the program. So that's how I got into it. And it wasn't. It was a very small organization at the time. I think we had maybe 20 people working there.
And that would have been 1968.
That would have been 1967.
67.
Yeah.
And what's the story on how the Northeast Kingdom had its Orleans County Council of Social Agencies, and the rest of the state had Champlain Valley OEO run by Lloyd LeGros, and you had this enclave in the 3 counties of the northeastern Vermont?
Yeah, of course, the Orleans County Council of Social Agencies was in place when I was hired. I have no idea how come it got to be Orleans County when it clearly was the 3 counties of the Northeast Kingdom. So I don't know who tacked that misnomer on there. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know anything about the other anti-poverty agencies when I was hired, of course. I didn't know anything about the whole program. But we soon learned, and I was ambitious and ever looking to expand our resources. So we went from a $200,000 a year organization to $4.5 million over a few years. And from 20 employees to being we were the 2nd largest employer in the Northeast Kingdom. Who the hell was the first? I can't remember.
Ethan Allen, wasn't it?
Probably was Ethan Allen.
Yeah.
We had 450 people working at
450.
450, yeah.
Wow.
That was included all those CETA trainees and stuff.
Yeah.
But see, we got the CETA program. We out-hustled the state and got our own program before they got themselves off their haunches. So that was a big deal. But in those days, I'd go after money from whoever had any.
But the rest of the state bought in to having the labor programs run by Champlain Valley OEO.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
But we had our own because we got them first. They had the opportunity to get them first, but they were out hustled.
So
we only got them first, but we got a lion's share. We got more than proportionally than the rest of the state because we said we wanted it. And we made applications. Do you remember how I used to make applications?
I do.
I would sharpen a whole box of pencils, and the night before, just about it was due after all of my procrastination, I would sit in there and write it by hand, and Linda would type it.
With very small handwriting, you wrote.
Well, I had to keep sharpening. I could not write anything with a pencil I can only write like a half a page, and then I gotta have a sharper pencil.
And one of the most interesting programs that you started, based on a grant, was MOB, Mobilization of Resources Incorporated. How did that get started?
Boy, I can't remember right at the moment. I can't remember. Of course, I must have gotten that from the Department of Labor, right?
Well, it was partly the Department of Labor, but there was this triple subsidy with...
I got something from the Governor's Council. Mm-hmm. The New England Governors Association gave me a grant. I can't recall. I really can't recall
Yeah.
all those.
I don't. I was there at the time, and I don't.
But I was a procrastinator.
Mhm.
And when I got there, I don't know. I'm trying to. The guy's name who preceded me was Carl, somebody or another. I don't think he had any interest in the program at all. But I had at least, I had been the county agent here for a while to run the 4-H program, and I had a secretary, so I knew something about office administration. Of course, I'd been in the service, so I'd got the whole 9 yards. But he had hired this old lady who wasn't poor. Can't remember her name. I had to type me a letter. It was a single sheet of paper, and there were 29 errors on that one sheet of paper. I mean, it was gibberish. And I felt really bad, but I have to say, I called her. I said, this is really not acceptable. And that's how Linda, the neighborhood youth girl, became the secretary.
Yeah.
Because he had a secretary that couldn't possibly become a secretary. I mean, she quit because she just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Tom, let me shift gears for a minute. We'll come back to OXA. But tell me about the Bradford hardline loggers.
Well, there's an old saying among loggers about hard lines and short rations. And when I came back to Bradford, as having come as close as possible to shirking my military duties, but I came back as a first lieutenant, and the next thing I knew, after having escaped the service, I thought, jocked my way through the entire thing. One night, here comes the select board of Bradford to my house. I said, "Oh my God, what is this all about?" And they said, "We have a chance. We have the opportunity to have an armory built in Bradford." And but we have no officer available to run it. So they laid it right on me, just damn civic duty, to take over the National Guard Company in Bradford, and we'll build a gymnasium. There'll be employment. There'll be permanent jobs, and I mean they shamed me into it. So. I don't know. I had a basketball. I got into. I jocked my way through the entire service, and when I came back, I kept it up with town team baseball and town team basketball, and I don't know, the hardline loggers. It just seemed like a natural name for hardlines and short rations. I met some loggers in the National Guard Company, and when I bought new uniforms, I bought them for hardline loggers. That's all I remember about that. And
so who was in the hardline loggers? Who were?
Well, local basketball players.
Yeah.
Basketball got to be pretty big, and there was.
And it always included a few ringers from Boston.
Well, see, we had 2 levels. We had several levels. For one thing, I started the Greater Bradford Inspirational Basketball League, where anybody could play, regardless of your ability. We would have, just like the draft meeting, we would have a meeting, and somebody would have to volunteer. We'd have 7 or 8 teams, and we would pick from the pool of players, from the best to the last, and everybody would play. That was the first level. We also had town team basketball was big in those. You had to be old enough to remember before television. I mean, we had television by this time, but it was not on the level. It was on the level where Ralph Emerson and the Vermont Hoedowners played on prime time every Saturday night on television on Channel 8. So when I was getting out of high school, one of the biggest events of the entire year was the Woodsville Amateur Basketball Tournament, and it was A and B, and of course, in those days, every town that had a gym of any size had a town team basketball tournament as a regular fall event.
Mm-hmm.
There was Bruce Campbell and the Hartford Indians down there, and he worked for the VA, he was the social service director. Of course, he's been dead many years now, but he had the Hartford Indians, and I had the Bradford Hardline Loggers, and they still were the Hardline Loggers. I had them when I had Oxley. We had the team. We
sure.
won the Canadian Championship 3 years in a row. But there was Class A and Class B, and Class A was for the local players, the good local players, and then Class B was for that, and Class A was for whoever you could get.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a lot of people that way. Because I recruited Larry Golden. You remember Larry Golden? He played for St. Anselm's. And I don't know how I found out about him, but I got him to play probably through George Huntington. I had the entire graduating class of Plymouth State College one year playing in the Woodsville tournament. And there are still people around that I don't even remember who played in those days, and we would go anywhere and everywhere to get a player. I sent to.
Well, you were famous for getting ringers.
Exactly.
For that tournament.
But you think I was the only one? Hell no! You ought to see my cousin Nudie up here in Groton. He would find players, and Bruce Campbell would find players, and we'd get them from colleges and from wherever. I can remember I had a player named Chris Conrad who played on my A team, but I had two ringers on the B team too, and they were from Champlain Valley, which of course is not a basketball powerhouse, but they were good big players.
And then you had Hubby and Danny.
Danny, I sent my ace right-hand man, Bruce Simon, to the third world country. It's a third world program at Goddard to see what he could find for basketball players. He's always telling me about how he walked in there, because I sent him over there cold to see what he could find. He's standing in front of a big picture of Shea Guevara. A couple of black girls come up to him and say, "What you want here, Hunky?" And he got Nicasio there, I think. And I always thought he got Hubby there too. But in talking to Hubby at the class reunion, no. They went all the way to New York City to get Hubby. And Hubby came here and played basketball and stayed here the rest of his life.
Yeah.
It was quite a sight, after his basketball days, to see a 6'8" black lineman climbing up the pole over there in Burlington. But that's what he did. He was quite outstanding because there weren't too many others like him on the power crew. He came to play basketball and stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they played. I remember they played in the Canadian Championship. But I would go anywhere to get basketball players, or I'd send Simon. I didn't have time to go.
Tom, do you remember the time when Putt, Blodgett, and Camp Challenge had a trophy for the best woods people? They could light fires and
that was all.
tents.
That was my idea.
Okay.
I mean, I promoted that, and I brought a 4-H team because remember I had 4-H kids just barely. As a matter of fact, some the counselors that I hired to help me run Camp Challenge were senior 4-H members who had gotten up into high school and graduated. So one of them is still here now. He's the postmaster here in town. His name is.
So, what I remember, and you will remember better, one year when you decided to take the kids, like neighborhood youth corps kids, from the Northeast Kingdom,
Yep.
and
See, that morphed into that. From the
Yep.
4-H team, it morphed into the kids from the Northeast, from the Oxer youth program. So
right,
we had at one time we had an outing club connected to Oxa. We had bicycles. Somebody stole the bicycles. Is that right? It almost seems to me like somebody stole the bicycles.
yes,
I can't remember.
it was the outing club.
Yeah, we had the outing club, and they became the foes down at Camp Challenge
Right.
to come and compete.
And you remember the one year I was involved, which was my responsibility was tree identification. I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
have anything to do with the heavy lifting stuff, but training those kids, and I believe we won that year just by the skin of our teeth.
By the skin of our teeth, yeah.
And maybe one or two of our kids were a little overage, but they were pretty good.
I can remember some of those kids. Well, actually,
Marjorie Moore's kids.
Margie Moore's kid. I was just going to say that Margie Moore's kids were involved in that.
Yep.
But I assume that the camp had the advantage because they had canoes all the time,
Yep.
and I can't remember. There was the regular Woodsman's Weekend events,
Yeah.
sawing and chopping and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But there was also canoes, and
Yeah.
I think there were canoe races.
Just to frame this session a little bit, can you, and this is going back, but can you talk about where you were born, where you grew up? Not 25 words or less for each little section, kind of thing, but just so that somebody listening to the film or listening to the and watching.
The film? What are you guys nuts? There's nothing to see here.
So that they would understand a little bit about the time frame and so forth.
Well,
You were born in Bradford.
I was born in Bradford, right at home. We were all born at home. I was born in 1931
in that brick house
in that brick house.
just north of Bradford.
Yeah, which
Village.
my father bought that and 80 acres for $1,200. The last time I saw it on the market, they wanted $230,000 for it, and of course it doesn't have any of the land left hardly. So times changed, money changed, but we were. My father got through the Depression with a self-sufficient farm. Mostly, he did. My father could build roads, and he had a very low regard for engineers because he could read. He only went to sixth grade, but he would bring home huge rolls of blueprints, and he would study and read those blueprints, and he would build those roads and put in bridges without an engineer. He was thoroughly disgusted when they brought an engineer around. Just another layer of useless bureaucracy. But anyway, he worked for the state. So, but my mother,
Was Route 5 paved then?
Route 5 was paved at that time, but no, not when I was a a child.
Right.
The only stretch of paved road between us and our relatives in Millbury, Massachusetts, right below Worcester, or Turners Falls, Massachusetts, on the river, was the main street of Brattleboro or Bellows Falls. There was one main street that was paved. That was all the paved road that there was between us and Massachusetts. And there was stories of farmers who would supplement their income by putting a hose out overnight on the highway and making a mud hole. And then they would pull your old Model A out with their team for $1 or $5 or whatever. It was big money in those days. Yes, no, there was no paved roads, but by the time I went to school, I think the road was paved.
I just want to know if it was here, 'cause
If it was what, Bar?
I hadn't seen it before. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
It's too hot for me.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we were quite poor growing up. We had 3 kids, and they never got married until they were late along in life. Talk about 38, they were older than that.
Mm-hmm.
And they met through a Lonely Hearts Club. And they never wanted us to know that.
Your dad was Louis Hahn.
Louis Hahn, there he is right there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they never wanted us to know that they met through a Lonely Hearts Club because that was considered to be a total disgrace in those days. Yeah, so, but my mother wrote, she was a school teacher. When she first started there, she taught at West Newbury for a while, and she went there in a horse and buggy, and she had to feed the horse. She had to bring stuff along for the horse. And then she taught in the same school in West Newbury. Years later, she taught there for like 6 months while the woman who we knew was getting some more credits to keep her job.
Mm-hmm.
So she taught there also. Of course, that school's been long closed. But anyway, yeah, so my mother wrote a story for Farmer's Home Journal on how to survive in the Depression. You know, we had bees, and we had goats milk, and we had fruit trees, we had apples, we had a big truck garden. She wrote about all of that stuff. She got $500,
I can't stand it.
which was a fortune in those days. And that's how we really survived the Depression. She wrote a story about it. The 38 hurricane came along, and my father had 2 big long hen houses that he built by himself by hand. He had 2,000 pullets just starting to lay, and it blew the roof off of both of those hen houses and scattered those 2,000 pullets all over the country. They were some of the fattest foxes around. So I think that's what he worked for the highway and built roads and stuff after that. And in the winter he ran a regular patrol section for the highway. Wasn't big for the state, so. And I guess I had a pretty normal high school. Schooling. Hated school.
Your mom was disabled, huh?
She was after a while. Yeah, she had strokes, probably from having children so late in life. Anyway, yeah. So we grew up with a series of domestic help, which we could write an entire book about just the domestic help. It was finding good domestic help was probably harder than it is now. We had one that drank, so I used to mark the bottle a little bit and to see how much she drank, and she got wise on that, and she'd fill the bottle back up with water to the mark. Cagey old bat. I remember another one who I had. This was later on when I had some friends hunting, and she took and baked a pie, and I went to cut myself a piece, and she said, "I baked that pie for Bob." She would let me in my own pie. So that was all interesting, but eventually we did get grown up, and like I said, it got kind of bad, so I went up here to live on the farm with my grandmother and uncle, and
Up here,
my sister
meaning
Faye
Woodsville.
my sister Faye went to live with Aunt Diana down in Millbury, Massachusetts, and Bill went off to the service. He got into the end of World War II.
So, 4 of you kids?
3.
3. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. So that was that.
And let's go back to Oxa for a minute.
All right.
We're skipping around.
Skip around.
Right. How did you meet Marjorie Moore? Tell us about Marjorie and some of the characters in.
I don't remember when I met Margie Moore. I met John Moore first. I picked him up hitchhiking, and he was full of it. John Moore was always full of it, and God, I don't remember whether I got to know Michael Moore, I think, before I got to know Margie. I used to go to dances, and he would be there, and Sheriff Jim Murphy would be there. And we all knew each other, and eventually I got to know Margie.
The dances would be in Orleans, or
Oh, they would be here and there. There used to be a lot of dance halls. There was a little dance hall out on the road to Glover. I can't remember what they called it, but Sheriff Murphy was the cop there, and Michael Moore was
what, the guy that kept the cop in business?
well, no, Michael Moore quit drinking early. He realized the stupidity of drinking at a very early age, and he met this school teacher from down Craftsbury way or something, Leslie, and he wound up marrying her. But Michael Moore lived with me when he was 17 or 18. I don't know why or how, but in one of the trailers that I lived in, Michael Moore was kind of a permanent resident, because I remember one night brought home some shrimp. I was going to have a treat, and Michael Moore just about threw up. He said, "You're going to eat them little insects?" There was no way I could even get him to think about tasting one of those. Yeah, he turned positively green when I dumped him out.
Wow.
Yeah, I knew Michael and John and Jimmy was the best one, the one who got killed.
Yeah.
He was the best of all of them.
In a tractor accident.
Yeah, well, a guy fleeing a crime clipped the tractor, and I don't know if he ever really got a whole lot about that. He was being pursued by the cops, or he wasn't being pursued by the cops, but he was fleeing from a crime. He thought he was being pursued. Can't remember the details of that either. Jimmy was a gentle giant. And he also had his inhibitions. I took him to see disappearances.
Ah.
He was in shock at the the homosexual scenes and that.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, he just couldn't stand it. Those boys weren't too sophisticated in those days. Yeah. And then the rest of them, of course, there was the younger ones. They were all younger then. I don't remember when Margie came in, and how she fitted. I think somebody hired her as a community aide, and immediately we all became her aides.
She was already a community aide when I became director of the federal program.
You know who probably brought Margie Moore in was Harriet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be one of Harriet's good moves.
Did you hire Harriet? Harriet was
wasn't Harriet there when I think
she was
Harriet
the deputy
there.
director. Was she there when you were hired?
Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure, but yes, I think she was. And I think that
Harriet Liddell.
I was kind of a little appalled that this woman, who obviously came from some means, was the executive director of the anti-poverty program. But then I got to know her, and I realized that she was absolutely perfect for the job. No one could hardly have been better.
Yeah.
She was great.
She was great.
Yeah.
Tom, perceiving that you might be getting a little tired.
No, I never get tired.
Okay.
I'm short of breath these days, but I think I'm in pretty near sole possession of my facilities, and I have plenty of energy but not much breath.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the ability to get around anymore because the goddamn fluid just keeps going to the bottom of my feet. You don't need to go there. I didn't even drink it to begin with.
It just got there.
Yeah, really.
So,
But anyway, whatever you want. It's like I said, there's really nothing to see here.
yeah, tell us about the OXA annual meetings and Earth People's Park, maybe, and Governor Snelling, and
Earth People's
some of that
Park
stuff. But
the OXA annual meetings, it was always my contention right from the start, and I probably learned that in that 6 weeks course I took from the annual meetings are for the people who we serve. I mean, the annual meetings are not a meeting of the goddamn board with a guest speaker. The meetings are for everybody we serve to get in and wallow and get some free food and stuff. And as far as Earth People's Park,
So how many people would show up at the annual meetings? They were held at the Orleans Fairgrounds sometimes.
Well, we held them in different places, and there was hundreds. I don't know just how many. I always catered in. I had no problem spending money, anti-poverty money, on poor people. So we always had free food, and I don't remember about the booze, but there was beer around. I don't remember much about it. God, you know, they were big social events, and but they were catered to. We would bus people in every community, and we made sure that anybody who wanted to get there and get some free food and celebrating or whatever. I think we always had music. Didn't we have music?
Yeah,
I think we did.
Yeah, there was music. I think Michael, your son, played at some of those, didn't he?
I can't remember.
I think so.
Remember, he probably did. You'd think so. He always had a band of some kind.
Yeah.
I had aides that worked at Earth People's Park, but I only was there once or twice in my entire tenure. But we did have a big hassle with Earth People's Park at the dance hall in Island Pond one night when Phil Emerson and I were in there dancing away, and this Dan was presiding. I can't remember who or what the occasion was, but it was another place where all of the poor people all of the clients were there because it didn't cost them any money, and they got free food, and they got something out of their program. But in the middle of the thing, so Junior Hoadley, you remember Junior Hoadley?
I do.
He was just a young kid. He came charging, and he said, Tom, you gotta come. They're killing somebody or another.
You always see him twice. Even twice.
I can't remember now. I think it was one of the Hoadley boys that they were killing. He was being beat up by Earth People's Park. So Phil and I decided to go out there and clean him out, which was no problem for me and Phil in those days. And they just kept appearing, and we just kept dropping them. And finally, some young girl about 70 pounds managed to get up high enough so she jumped on Phil and got her legs right around his neck. Her arms over his eyes, and he said, Tom, help me. I said, hell, I ain't helping you. You got it that by yourself. You get out of it. That's all I remember about that big brawl. But everybody went home happy. But Earth People's Park wasn't too much of a match for me and Phil in those days. But we did.
Speaking of brawls, I remember one time, I don't know why I hung around, but we were at a bar in Orleans, and Phil was there, and you were there.
Who was there? Phil was there? Yeah.
Phil Emerson. And a bunch of other AXA people and a bunch of local people who were AXA people.
The perfect setup.
And somebody stepped on somebody's foot, I think, at the bar.
Oh, yeah?
And it almost instantly turned into a brawl, and somebody's glasses went flying off in one direction. And
I don't even remember
you
that.
don't remember that? You were involved in so many of them, but you were right in the thick of this, and I don't think anybody knew who was on whose side. All I knew was...
Yeah, you can get pinched out in one of those things by your own pals.
I just
I don't
retreated into some corner, and
I don't particularly remember that particular fiasco, but things are different in those days. Christ, we all go to jail now. Yeah.
Yeah, that was sometime in the early 70s, I would say.
Yeah, things were a lot more liberal in those days. I remember Clifford Crowe. He just died here recently. He was a mechanic, and he worked at the mold plant.
Mm-hmm.
And one night he wrecked his car or something, and he came back, got back to the mold plant, and he took the truck and the trailer, the government, our property truck and trailer, and he went and loaded, and somehow he was drunk off his ass, he went and loaded that on his first vehicle onto the trailer. And he didn't realize it, but the trailer had a flat tire. So they're going up Route 5 with a stream of flame coming out behind it, and cop pulled him over. The cop called me up and said, "Hey, what do you want me to do with him?" Can you imagine that happening these days? I think I had him parked the thing and sent somebody to take I don't even know how the cop got my number in the middle of. Oh, I never had an unlisted number or anything. But Jesus, that you could nothing like that could happen today. Good Lord, can you imagine the cop having that opportunity and not nailing him?
That's right. Right. Well, I think we should wrap up.
We're wrapping up nothing because there was nothing here to start with. But it was fun to shoot the shit.
No,
Would you say it was? You said you'd had a good life. Was it a good career for you? Sounds like you kind of happened on it accidentally.
I happened on the career accidentally. That was just one of my careers. I think my best career was being a mountain man in Montana and shooting 3 or 4 elk every day and thumbing my nose at the wardens and living on venison and working in the woods. I don't know if I ever was really designed to be an executive or administrator of any kind. I mean, there certainly is not much.
I beg to differ.
Well,
you were.
I think he's right. I just stumbled on that
You
career.
were the ultimate
And it was great.
executive director.
It was great.
But all right, why don't you say just a few words about Montana? Because you got out there.
Well, I don't know how much you've lived in Montana, but
Quite a lot.
to me, the striking difference between here and Montana is the cultural life, the social life. Pick up a paper here, the Green Mountain Trading Post or the bridge, or there's 1,000 social things for you to attend. You know, there's these groups. This is a group for every goddamn purpose that ever existed. I didn't see any of that in Montana. I mean, we had the annual rodeo, and but of course, people and towns are so far apart out there. There's so much territory between the people, but I found that the culture was a lot different as far as what social interplay between groups of people is. The bar life was great out there. The bar life was great here, but God, you could go out there and you could catch a limit of fish any time of any kind, just about you wanted, and you could certainly shoot whatever you wanted to shoot if you were a hunter. And so, you know, I just kind of liked living in Montana, and I liked working in the woods. I had a bunch of Indians that worked with me. My God, most of them are dead now. I can't believe it. All young guys who, they don't have a long mortality, those non-reservation Indians.
There's a lot of alcoholism.
A lot of alcoholism, and I know 2 or 3 people that were friends of mine that were murdered. And I know others that murdered people are up in Deer Lodge now. Yeah, it's kind of a hard life. But when I got out there, of course, I wanted to continue my athletic stuff. So immediately I got at one time out there I had an old Aussie softball team. That's for those over 35. I had a regular softball team. I had a women's team, and I had a co-ed team. And there's all kinds of, there are at least softball tournaments. They're kind of dying out now, but they used to be. Of course, I being a Johnny come lately, everybody was organized and everybody had their teams, and the Indians weren't. Nobody picked up the Indians because you really couldn't hardly rely on them, because I'd been downstairs with a basketball tournament playing in the KSC downstairs gym, and my star player would be upstairs at the bar drunk off his ass.
You live right in town of Butte?
What's that?
Did you live right in Butte?
I lived outside of Butte. I've never really lived in town. I lived on a ranch out there. I got kind of a deal. There were some old settlers there. Came and the guy built himself a place, and he had 3 or 4 acres, and he died, and his relatives came from Switzerland to settle up, and they just sold everything to the ranch. So the ranch had that little place there on the ranch that they didn't have any real use for. So I rented that, tried to buy it for years, but the old folks didn't want to sell it. So I just lived there for years, and Raymond Freehart still lives there. Remember the Freehart?
I do.
Yeah, Raymond.
Edgar Freehart is who I remember.
Who's that?
Edgar.
Well, that was his father.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he had numerous kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was famous for going out the upstairs window onto the adjoining roof with his trousers in his hand. That was Edgar. And he had some good-looking daughters, some of which I still have. Well, Raymond still has some connection. One of them married somebody in Germany, Austria or somewhere. And one died. I went to her funeral and scattered their ashes up on some mountain there by in Barton, outside of Barton. I can't even remember where the hell that is. Now I can't remember nothing.
You remember a lot.
I remember a lot, but by God, there's things that you can't remember. I mean, people's names that you know as well as you know your own. Can't come up with them from time to time. Yeah, Ray Freehart. I know something about some of his other daughters, but I can't think of it now. What I even know about them.
Well, an awful lot of people went out to Montana because you were out there.
27 people moved out there when I moved out there.
27?
Yeah, it's just like I just telling you. There's nothing to see here, folks. But 27 people moved out there, and a lot of them are dead too. Phil Emerson was one. You know, Phil Emerson moved out to Montana, and
for a while.
And until he got ill, until he got that cancer. That's what brought him back. David Bro moved out there. And there's some people out there. There's a handyman down here that takes trash on weekends. His name is Wade Dimmock. He's one of the several people that, he's not exactly the swiftest guy that ever came down the creek, old Wade. Mm-hmm. But he moved out there.
And Howard Mosher's kids
Jake moved out there and lived with me for a long time until he got himself established. And we had some adventures back in the day. He was just a kid when he moved out here. He was actually a college graduate, but he didn't look. He looked about 14. Mm-hmm. And he had a fist fight with a bartender to get his registration, to get his identification back. And he wasn't afraid to punch somebody out either.
What year did you move to Montana?
1967, I believe. Wait a minute,
No.
have I got that right? No,
87.
that's when I came to Oxford. 1980 was when I moved to Montana. 1967 was when I went to Oxford. Yeah. 1980, I moved to Montana right about there. I got the call. I got that job, of course, as a reward for battling Dick Snelling. The guy who was out there was somebody I knew. It was Ed somebody, another. I can't remember his name either. He called me up and he said, I'm sitting in my office. He says that I can look out the window. I can see the east ridge right from my office, and on that ridge is elk and deer in quantities you'd never believe. And it's within short miles of here, there's the best fishing that you've ever known and experienced. He says, I've got a job. So it was kind of a setup for me to get that job out there. It was. I would have been perfectly happy to stay here and be a logger, but I was a lot happier being a logger out there.
Yeah.
Great. You've been in the woods in the West, haven't you, Rick? He
Not
has.
much. Not much.
It is so much different.
Yeah.
It's so dry out there in Montana that underbrush just doesn't grow.
Yeah.
You can walk right from one tree to another. I was so stunned when I got out there and saw that.
You have any words of wisdom? Summarize how things are going, or
I don't know if in my entire life if I ever had any words of wisdom. As a matter of fact, I figure that most of the time I'd have been a hell of a lot better off if I hadn't even opened my mouth. That's the word of wisdom. Keep your mouth shut.
well, I can remember that one time. That's the most famous words you ever uttered, which have been repeated so many times around, which was at an OXA annual meeting when Governor Snelling, then a candidate, I think, for the governorship, showed up in 1976 or 75, and you had some words of introduction for him, if I recall.
I don't remember.
You called him a porky flatlander.
Well, I remember calling him a porky flatlander. That was at the annual meeting.
I believe it was.
Oh yeah.
And he wanted to speak to the people of the Northeast Kingdom, and you had several hundred people there at the annual meeting, and so.
Oh yeah. Well, me and Dick were never much on the same line, but he was the same with the chief of police, Lynch. There, he's sort of like Donald Trump. He couldn't stand anyone's opinion but his own. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, I should be one to talk, you know. Well, I'm really sorry that the anti-poverty program came to the demise it came to without. I mean, it should still be going, and it still should be unrestrained and unfettered. Can you imagine Donald Trump allowing something like that?
Would not happen.
No,
Would
it
not
wouldn't have.
happen.
My God, that guy does something every day that should have him ran right out of office.
Well,
You got everything shut off now?
No.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
good.
Well, I was going to tell you about my scenario, my favorite fantasy for the end of Donald Trump, but I'll spare that right
no,
now
that's
until
okay.
we stop
That's
recording.
okay. Go ahead. Tell us.
You know, I figure, Donald Trump is such an absolute egotist that when he does get voted out of office, that he's going to say it's all massive fraud, and he's going to refuse to relinquish power. So my favorite fantasy is having him taken out in the Rose Garden by a SWAT team or a SEAL team, a Navy SEAL team.
No. He just gave up half the Tongass wilderness to the mining interests. And the oil interests.
Every day he does something. Every day they shut down some regulation or stop some rule to greatly hurt the country or some part of the country.
Yeah.
And people should be out there on the White House lawn with pitchforks and torches.
Oh my gosh. Well, we should wrap up, and
Well, I don't know what
to
this
be
was all
continued.
about. I think it's a great exercise in futility, but of course the man of my declining years appreciates the attention. I haven't had any attention for quite a while. Martha only gives me attention when she thinks I'm Uncle Skunk.
Okay. Well, it's been great. We should give you a little time to rest a little bit. And Janice, it's been, I don't know if you're listening, but it's been good to see you. And
Are you listening, Ma?
I
Our
think
company
she's
is
sleeping
leaving.
right now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she does that pretty good.
Yeah. But,
Incidentally, Uncle Skunk got himself a decent woman, reformed and quit drinking. He died many years ago, but he lived a kind of a productive life, and they used to come and fish all the time. They used to fish in the Connecticut
No
River.
kidding.
Yeah, he did much better. One of his other brothers, Leonard, got killed by that sneaky Jimmy Hood, who wasn't any good and laid poor Leonard in the grave. We even had to write a song about it.
Wow.
That's another whole story. There was three Prey brothers. There was Bill, who was with them on the night of the skunk, and Uncle Skunk, and then there was Leonard. And then there was a sister named Ada. And you don't remember Henry, Montana, because that was all before your time. So that was when my main interest was running the National Guard. I have a lot of stories about running the National Guard. Nobody ever ran a National Guard company like that before or since, because once again they'd go to jail. But we used to have if you had a guard, if you were in the guard, you had to go to a weekend drill once a month.
Right.
Well, we had a way of making those. Actually, Henry Wiggett was a great actor at my weekend drills before anybody knew him around here. He appeared on my weekend drills as Colonel Alex Nestovich of the Soviet intelligence. And nobody knew him. So that's a whole other story, but we would fire our rifles on unsupervised ranges up there on the old Montana farm, which is tucked way back in the woods there in Thompson. And Henry's mother, and she had this boyfriend named Jimmy Hood. And when we were there, she would bring her pistol out, which was a regular old revolver, but it had half
This is
moon
Ada.
clips.
Is that Ada, the sister?
Ada.
Yeah. You just said it. Yeah.
Yeah, she had half moon clips there, and you could put government issue 45 shells in that pistol if you used the half moon clips. Otherwise, they'd go right through because they didn't have a rim on them. So she had this boyfriend named Jimmy Hood, and she had her brother Leonard. And one morning, when Ada decided the relationship was over, Jimmy went to work ostensibly, and Ada had her brother Leonard put all of his stuff out on the porch. So when he came home from work, he'd know he was out, but he never went to work. He was hiding up in the bushes watching the whole thing from up on the ridge. So he come down, and he had a big knife, but Leonard had the 45 loaded with government ammunition, strapped to his waist. Well, there was an argument, and there was a tussle, there was a discussion, and fucking Jimmy wound up with the 45, and he shot Leonard and killed him right there on the porch. And then he went after Ada, but Ada was no slouch. She was in the back bedroom with the 30-06, and when he came around the corner, she shot the shit out of the frame. And Jimmy decided it was time to leave since she had the long rifle and he only had the pistol. So he took off into the woods, and Henry came home. They got the cops, and they found him. But Leonard was dead, and of course, my involvement in it was unauthorized federal ammunition. How the hell did they get that? You know? And of course, the colonel, Palson Giacomo, which is a famous, kind of a well-known name around the Barry area, his son went on to be a lawyer, I guess.
And he was the chair of the committee that I was on.
Oh,
yeah.
Was that the old man or the kid? The big red-headed kid?
Not big. No. That might have been...
Ballaston Giacomo was older. You know, he was a colonel in the National Guard, but he was right there when I gave Ada that box of ammunition.
Wow.
So they said they said, well, you know, we got this problem because that guy was killed with federal ammunition, and everybody, you know, we have to. So let's say that we'll just say that Henry stole it. And I said, you can kiss my ass. Everybody knows where that ammunition came from, and I'll just say that I gave it to her because I gave it to her. And you can take your National Guard company and march it off to Georgia, because I was going to Oxford anyway. I didn't want to bother with it.
Wow.
So that was the story of. And Jimmy Hood served a lot of time, and now he's out. He probably has died by now. I don't know, but he got out of Windsor or out of wherever it was. But that was the story of that sneaky Jimmy Hood who wasn't any good and laid poor Leonard in the grave. Leonard had no wife to mourn for his life, but his sister, she was brave. I don't remember who wrote the song either.
Well, you know that it's based on Jesse James, the folk song Jesse James.
Is it?
Yeah, those are the exact words.
Are you really true? I surely knew that.
Yes, you did. I'm
So
sure.
nobody wrote it. We just put the different words in there, huh?
And they laid poor Jesse in his grave. And
All right.
Robert
Yeah.
Taylor.
Mississippi John Hurt used to sing that one.
Yep.
Is that right? Oh my God! I didn't. I thought that probably somebody clever wrote that, but no. We just put the words to somebody else's song. I'll be damned. I'm sure I knew that at the time. It's been a lot of fun having you guys over. It's all bullshit.
it's been great, and I can't speak for Tom.